Hello dear students, welcome to Prerna, Priya's e-learning classes. I have named my e-learning classes as Prerna. Prerna means inspiration, and if you have any suggestions or comments, you can inbox me at prernaelearning@gmail.com. So I have opened a new address, that is prernaelearning@gmail.com. Okay, in this class, I'm planning to discuss on a topic which you will find in the second module of your syllabus. Okay, second module, and that is English literature during the World Wars. Okay, in my classes earlier we had discussed in detail regarding the world wars, how destructive these wars were, the social and economic impacts of these two wars. In this class, I in fact plan to discuss more on literature. Okay, writers, poets and thinkers who wrote during this period, this the World War period. Okay, now as you can see, as we have discussed earlier, the world was brought a lot of destruction, massive destruction actually. It unleashed death in an unprecedented and unparalleled manner. And you know that the First World War, which happened between 1914 and 1918, 19 million people died. And then there was a great economic depression in between, which created a lot of problems in the economic scenario. And then the Second World War happened within 2 decades. Okay, now here 85 million people died in the Second World War. Now after the Second World War, you can see how this sort of confusion did not end. People did not know where the world was heading to, and economic problems persisted. The inflation rate was very high, shortage of food items were there, unemployment was soaring very high. So generally there was a pessimistic note that could be seen around. Now here I have a few names, 13 in fact, which I've taken from your syllabus. I have been very careful not to make any changes regarding the order. This is the order that you find it in the syllabus. So in this page, you can see a few names here. So in this class, I'm planning to discuss until W.B. Yeats, okay, 6 people, because otherwise if I discuss all the 13 people, it would be very lengthy and you would find very boring. So I'll be coming back soon with the other people. So let us discuss Bertrand Russell, Aldous Huxley, H.G. Wells, Arnold Toynbee, E.M. Forster and W.B. Yeats today. Now let me first discuss regarding the features of these writings, of the writings of these people. Now you have to understand that these people lived during the world wars, and in their writings very much that fear, pain and agony could be seen. That was reflected very well in their writings. Now, what were the main features of their writing generally? What commonality can you understand, or can you assess in their writings? I would like to say that there was a huge cultural and philosophical shift that could be seen in the writings. Now, I have written here patriotism and idealism as the next point. What I mean to say here is that in 1914, when the First World War began, the writers and poets tried to evoke a nationalist sentiment, patriotic feeling, by glorifying the soldiers. Okay, that was seen at the inception, but it did not continue for a very long time, because people understood that this was a war that was not to end very soon. It continued for 4 years. So very soon we could see writers and poets focusing more on the brutal reality of the war, as you can see in Men at War, written by Ernest Hemingway. Unfortunately, Hemingway doesn't figure in this list, because, but anyway, this is a very important work, Men at War by Ernest Hemingway. So the brutal reality of war can be seen in their writings. Now, another point is that how these people try to portray well, expose to the world the hypocrisy of the leaders and society in general, and also about the futility of the wars. Okay. Then let me also tell you that the technological developments, scientific developments also influence their writings. You could see how chemical weapons were discovered, even the atomic bombs were used. So such discoveries and inventions could be seen in their writings. For example, H.G. Wells, about whom we'll be discussing in this class. Now, they also wrote about the societal upheavals due to economic impoverishment and other problems. Gripping love stories figured in their writings. Then post-traumatic stress disorders, psychological disorders, especially those who participated in the World Wars. I've given for you an example here: shell shock, personal experiences. Okay. Then another important feature I would like to say is regarding the emergence of modernism. So it was a self-conscious break from traditional kind of writing, that is modernism, a self-conscious break from the traditional way of writing. Next is expressionism, another very important avant-garde writing style, where you can see that it was a revolt against realism and naturalism, that is expressionism. Next is surrealism. I'm sure you must be familiar with all these terms. Surrealism, and another avant-garde style, where you can see there was an attempt to bridge together reality and imagination, and you could see how it was an attempt to overcome the contradictions between the conscious and the unconscious by creating a bizarre world, unreal exposure, unreal world, using a lot of strange juxtapositions. That is what is known as surrealism. You must have definitely studied. Then I can also say how they wrote about they had this haunting vision of the post-war society. Like, for example, today we are in fact worried about that condition or the post-COVID world. That sort of scenario is what is worrying all of us today. And in the same way, those people were haunted by the thoughts of the Second World War. So that could be seen. Disillusionment and to say pessimistic note could be seen. Then other point is that colonialism and decolonization. Colonialism, you could see how many colonial empires got crumbled, and that was reflected in their writings. How they try to reconcile, how they try to in fact understand the relationship between the colonizer and the colonized. That could be seen. Then many were humanists and pacifists in their outlook. Then regarding spiritual side, I can say some of them tried to disentangle life from death. Then another important feature was like how women also turned to writing. Okay, like you have Virginia Woolf, Dorothy Sayers, then you have Naomi Mitchinson. So these, how come a lot of women started writing during this period? You have to understand that they started addressing a lot of issues. They started taking up those roles which were traditionally masculine. They were involved in the maintenance of society. They were the breadwinners. So they started openly discussing on wars and the conditions, because they played a very important role. The suffragette movement was very active in England at that time. So you could see how women also used poems and essays as an emotional outlet. That could be seen. Then different genres, they could see a variety of genres here: poems, novels, dramas, diaries, letters, memoirs especially. Then also cheap crime thrillers were written, and also pornography. Okay, now what all you can see how the paperback revolution, which also happened in the 1950s, gave a new impetus to this large spread writing in this particular period. How it became a very cheap way of printing, the paperback revolution. So that too helped, that was an important feature which helped to spread literature, English literature especially, across the globe. Okay, now let me discuss the first person given in a syllabus, that is Bertrand Russell. Now, he was born in a very prominent aristocratic family, and that is why he had this title Earl. Okay, now we know him as a philosopher, logician, mathematician. I've given all here: historian, writer, essays, social critique, political activist, etc. His contributions mainly analytic philosophy, where you could see how he gave a lot of importance to argumentative philosophy using mainly logic, okay, and mathematics. Then there was this automated reasoning, okay, where you can see how reasoning was applied in logic as well as later in computing systems, that is automated reasoning. Then there is this Barber paradox. Okay, now you don't have to really go into it, but I just brought this image for you, where you can see how through this paradox he was. You could see how apparently plausible scenarios were made logically impossible by Russell. For example, I read it out for you. If the barber does not shave himself, then he is a man that does not shave himself and therefore must shave himself. എന്താ മനസ്സിലായതാണ് barber paradox. Okay. Now, the other details about Russell. He was an anti-war activist. Okay, generally all of them are anti-war activists, anti-imperialist, then a major spokesperson towards nuclear disarmament. He was a socialist who believed in equality, pacifist, empiricist. Empiricism is that kind of knowledge which believes that knowledge should be earned through experiences, like what you do in the labs. It's all based on experimentation, observation and conclusion, a scientific way of approach. That is empiricism. He was an agnostic, he was skeptical, that means he questioned a lot of things. Utilitarian, we have discussed that already. Whatever a person does should be for the maximum use of the others in society. You could also see him attacking the role of the US in the Vietnam War. That made him, that you could see how the authority did not like his view regarding this particular war. Then, his most important work was Principia Mathematica, which he co-authored with A.N. Whitehead. Then on denoting, a very important philosophical essay on denoting. Then other works I've given here, I'll just read through the works. German Social Democracy, an essay on the foundations of geometry, the principles of mathematics. So see here in this work, he's put forward the theory that mathematics and logic are one and the same. Okay. Then BBC Lectures, Authority and Individual, where he tried to focus more about the role of an individual in the society and how the government, in fact, should take care of it, authority and the individual. Generally his interests, a lot of interests are given here. Epistemology is actually the study of knowledge, ethics, logic. Okay, you can have a look at it later. Now, he was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in the year 1950. It is mainly for his contribution to literature and also his thoughts which were focused on freedom of expression. Then he influenced a lot of realms, a lot of learning of fields like logic, linguistics, artificial intelligence, cognitive science, computer science, etc. Okay, so that is about Bertrand Russell. We move on to the next person, Aldous Huxley, who in fact wrote a lot of dystopian novels, which I'm sure you must have read. Okay, we know him as an English writer and a philosopher who was famous for his novels and non-fiction works. Now, regarding him, he was also born in a very affluent family, and his the features of his writings, you can see humanism, pacifism was there, philosophical mysticism that could be seen, and universalism. Then regarding the works, okay, the most important one, The Brave New World, a dystopian novel. Now, what is dystopia? Are you familiar with that word? Okay, it is actually an antonym of utopia. Utopia is what? Utopia is where you imagine about an ideal society. Dystopia is actually the opposite, where things unpleasant are imagined, dehumanizing society is imagined. So this was a dystopian novel, The Brave New World. Okay, now he in fact in this particular work, Brave New World, he wrote about a genetically engineered future where there would be no pain but life is meaningless. Now this work influenced George Orwell a lot when he wrote his 1984, another very important dystopian novel, 1984 by George Orwell. Okay, then A Dose of Perception, another very important work. Here you could see him expressing his psychedelic experiences or the usage of drugs. He used mescaline. So his experiences after using the psychedelic experiences can be seen. Then The Perennial Philosophy, very important philosophical work. You could see how he tried to say that all the religious thoughts had the same metaphysical origin and truth. Same metaphysical origin and truth. Then Devils of Loudon, another very important historical narrative, which was all about religious fanaticism and also sexual repression. That is Devils of Loudon. Then he was associated with Vedanta philosophy. Just for your knowledge, I've brought that point here. Okay, I've given all the novels. You can look at it later. Chromelo, Antique, Those Barren Leaves, Ape and Essence. Okay, and short stories. He also wrote essays. On the Margin. Okay, that's very important. Heaven and Hell. Then Ends and Means. He also wrote a number of screenplays, Ape in Essence, Madame Q. You can find the year that it was written on the left. Then that is about Aldous Huxley, who is famous for his dystopian novels. Now we move on to the third person, that is H.G. Wells. Okay, all of you know H.G. Wells. Now he was an English writer, a commentator, a satirist, a biographer. Now his genres were mainly scientific fiction and also social realism. I told you earlier like how these people, their writings were influenced by the technological development. So he was a futurist, and you could see that he was a prophetic social critic. He made a lot of, he commented a lot about what the world would be after a few years. That is why we call him prophetic. He was a utopian, socialist and pacifist, and he was didactic. Didactic is when you sound like, teaching somebody, a moral lesson being given, that is didactic. Then regarding his spiritual ideas, I could say that he tried to distance himself from religion, which was Christianity. Now his important works. Anne Veronica. Anne Veronica was about a girl who in fact tried to rebel against her father, who was a patriarch. And here in this particular work you can see very much the vignettes of the suffragette movement, which was active in England at that period. Then as an important work you have to note, especially the Time Machine. Time Machine, he used a frame narrative to write. Frame narrative. Are you familiar with frame narrative? That is when there is a plot which points you to another second story, which focuses or leads you to a more important story. Okay, that is the frame narrative. So he used that. 1001 Nights was the same way the frame narrative is used. In the Time Machine, you can see how a particular machine was described by H.G. Wells, a machine which did time travel, with the help of which travel could be made backward and forward with time. That is Time Machine. The Invisible Man was about a person who learned the technique to be invisible, but unfortunately did not know how to take this original position. So that is about Invisible Man. And then Island of Dr. Moreau. That's about a very mad scientist who tried to create a hybrid variety of human beings using his knowledge in biological engineering. So you could see how H.G. Wells attempted all those scientific knowledge which he had in writing. That is why he was famous for his scientific romances that we say. And Tono Bungay was famous for the radioactive decay theme which he used. Then The World Set Free was about how the world would be using a destructive nuclear weapon. So he sounded very prophetic here because very soon, that was in 1945, you could see how the US bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So he was truly prophetic when he wrote this, The World Set Free. Okay, scientific romances, you can see him writing about time travel, alien invasion, invisibility, biological engineering, etc. Then you cannot simply say that he wrote only about scientific development. You could see how he wrote about common people and social novels like Kipps, then The History of Mr. Polly. You can see how he was a socially realistic person. Okay, now we move on to Arnold Toynbee. Arnold Toynbee was a very important historian, a British historian, philosopher. Now, he was born into a family of prominent intellectuals. His sister was an archaeologist, his grandfather was an economist. So, he was a very prominent intellectual. He was born in a descendant of prominent intellectuals, in fact, and he was a delegate to the Paris Peace Conference of 1919. We've discussed that earlier. This was a conference which was held after the First World War, where the winners and the vanquished met, and the winners dictated terms over the vanquished. Now, his important work, or the magnum opus, again you have to remember this is quite often asked in exams, that is a study of history. Okay, a huge work, okay, a 12-volume work, that is a study of history. Now, in this particular work, you could see how Toynbee studied about 26 civilizations. He studied about the genesis, the growth, and the decay of 26 civilizations. And he used a lot of terms like creative minority, how the creative minority answered to the challenges of nature. For example, when there was no water, how the creative minority or leaders found ways to get water for agriculture. So that is the role of creative minority, which according to him was so important in the genesis or the growth of a civilization. Then he also mentioned about challenge and response theory, how nature and society pose challenges, and how the creative minority, answered or reacted to these challenges. So, challenge and response theory. So, this theory, this particular work or such theories of Arnold Toynbee, you can say was the most proactive theory in history since Karl Marx had come up with his theory of class struggle and economic determinism. Very important theory, that is the challenge and response theory, and generally about this work, a study of history. Other works I have written here, if you can study, well and good. Nationality and the War, please note that work, Nationality and the War. Then a lot of works I have given here, the German terror in Belgium, all political essays and historical works. Okay, so that's about Arnold Toynbee, a prominent philosopher known for his magnum opus, a study of history. Now we move on to E.M. Forster. You know him very much because he wrote a book about India, that is A Passage to India. Okay, now he was a novelist, a short story writer, essayist, and a librettist. Who's a librettist? One who writes texts for an opera, who is known as a librettist. Okay, so he was a librettist. Now you could see him trying to address the irreconcilability of class differences and hypocrisy in his works. He used symbolism, mysticism, realism and modernism, and he was a conscientious objector of the First World War. What is a conscientious objector? One who very openly said that he did not want to participate in the war. He did not want to go to the war front as a soldier. He was very much against. He openly stated his view. That is a conscientious objector. Now his novels, Where Angels Fear to Tread. This idiom, he had in fact taken it from Alexander Pope's Essays and Criticism. Where Angels Fear to Tread, The Longest Journey, A Room with a View, Howard's End, and Passage to India. We have to discuss on that work, Passage to India. Okay, now you can see how this particular work, Passage to India, got widely discussed everywhere. It became a very important post-colonialist discourse. Okay, so you could see how he tried to address the inappropriate friendship between the colonizers and the colonized. That's a view from critiques. Okay, now another set of people say that he addressed issues like sexism, racism and imperialism. Now another group argued that he was trying to portray the damages created by colonialism in India. Another discourse says that it was all about how a British officer, how Europeans generally saw colonial relationships. Then you have to say that it was a work which tried to see India in optimistic light. that was very different. In most of the writing, Orientalist writing, you could see how writers had tried to depict India as a land of ancient wisdom, okay, as a land of snakes and snake charmers, elephants, festivals. So this is a different view that he had in this particular work, A Passage to India. So it was a writing of the Orient in an optimistic light. Now you have to say that this is a very important text as far as the post-colonial discourses are considered. It is discussed very much along with Kim of Rudyard Kipling and also Joseph Conrad's writings on colonies or countries like India. Okay, last person is W.B. Yeats. Okay, born in Ireland, he became famous as a poet, and you have to know that he contributed a lot to the Irish literary establishment. He, along with a few others like Lady Gregory, Edward Martin, founded the Abbey Theatre, a very important cultural institution in Ireland. And he was also a politician, a senator. Now, you could also see that he was awarded a Nobel Prize in Literature in the year 1923. And another important point that you have to note here is he also wrote the foreword to our own Tagore's Gitanjali, okay, which also won Nobel Prize. Okay. Now, regarding the area that he focused, he mainly got his themes from Irish myths and folklore. And you could see how there was this influence of occult practices and theosophical beliefs. Theosophical society, you must have studied in school. Theosophical beliefs. So, many critics complained about the lack of intellectual credibility in his writings because he addressed occult and theosophical beliefs. But you also have to know that later he addressed a lot of contemporary issues. He was a symbolist who used allusive imagery. Now, another very important feature was how he was pre-Raphaelite in character. Now, who was Raphael? Raphael was an important Renaissance painter, a painter of the Renaissance period. Now, pre-Raphaelite brotherhood was in fact founded by a lot of scholars who focused on the style before Raphael. So, the style before Raphael was mainly important for its simplicity and austerity. So, regarding W.B. Yeats' style, it is said that he was pre-Raphaelite in character. Raphael, a Renaissance painter, okay, pre-Raphaelite in character. Now, you could see him using traditional forms in writing, slightly different from the other modernists who experimented free verse. Now, he also tried to address a lot of spiritual themes. His important works are here: The Second Coming, then The Tower is very important, The Winding Stairs, okay, Easter. Okay, so that is about W.B. Yeats. So I have discussed 6 people of the second, so 6 writers of the second module. You can find the rest also in the slide given in this particular class. So I'll be coming back with those people also very soon. At the end, you will have in fact a very good essay of how a lot of thinkers and writers contributed to literature in the World War period. How the World War in fact affected their writings, that could be seen. So that is for today. So I'll come back very soon with the other people, other writers and poets. So thank you. Stay safe, stay connected. Bye bye. Thank you.